Chapter 2 Observation and Angles. Now that we've had some practice breaking down complex shapes and turning them into simpler ones, we're now going to put away the tracing paper and draw these from observation. For this assignment, you have several options. You can do this either traditionally with pencil and paper, or you can do this digitally as well. And in terms of actually looking at your source, I'd highly encourage you to set up the still life on a desk, maybe next to you while you draw and actually look at your objects. Or you can simply use the photos you might have taken when you did the trace overs. Now, I will be doing this demonstration in Photoshop. That way it's a lot easier for me to show you what I'm actually drawing and what I'm looking at the same time. But I'm going to treat it the same way as if I was doing this traditionally with the objects in front of me. Jumping straight into my demonstration, I've gone ahead and set up my canvas to be the same size as my printer paper, which is 8.5 by 11. So those of you that are doing this traditionally, you can kind of relate to the size that I'm using. I would encourage you all to try to use the whole page, but if you want to draw a little bit smaller, an acceptable size would be half the page, but I wouldn't go any smaller than that. The first thing I need to consider with my still life, since I'm not tracing it, I need to know how I want to frame the object onto my drawing. Now I need to consider whether I'm going to use a vertical or a horizontal format. So for this one, the way the objects are arranged, the bottle here is the longest and tallest object versus from the width, from the edge of this golden vase all the way to the bottle here in the glass. So if I go with a horizontal format, I might have to include more areas of the background than I really want to, or trim off the area of the bottle. But for this demo, I want to include the whole still life, so a vertical format would be the best option. Before I begin to put in my first shapes inside, I also want to consider how this is going to be fitting in the frame. So just kind of observing my still life, I'm really trying to pre-plan how this would all fit on my page and what my first shapes would be to put in. I normally prefer to start with the largest shapes or something that's really close to the edge so I know where my boundaries are. So from here, I'm going to try to gauge the top of the bottle and the bottom of the shadow and fruit as sort of my starting point because they're pretty close to the edge of the page. So for my drawing, just by looking, I'm going to mark off the top of the bottle where I think it might be located. And from there, in relation, I'll try to rough out the bottom of the fruit and the shadow. So I'm going to turn off that little guide because I will want to think about this as I'm just observing it from life. The next thing is, now that I have a starting point, I can try to find the other edges as well. So I'm looking at the golden vase and trying to find that edge in relation to the top of the bottle, which is my starting point. And I'm going to be trying to estimate and rough out this angle that I am observing. Now to help guide myself, I can also use my pencil by holding it out in front of me at a certain angle. When you do this, you want to hold out your arm as straight as you can with your elbow locked. So just to illustrate, this might be the tip of the pencil with the eraser, and I'm trying to mark it off. And what I'm trying to do is observe where those two edges meet and try to think about the angle that it's creating. Instead of trying to say that it's a 45-degree angle, which is really hard to measure by looking, I'm going to just think of it as a hand of a clock. So this one looks like it'll be pointing at 1 o'clock, right? Now from there, when I draw this out, I'm going to do my best to rough out a light version of that angle and try to mark off that line. Okay. From there, I can also try to find the edge of the bottom of that vase, thinking about the angle that it's creating, roughing that out. Now from that edge to the bottom of the edge of the fruit, like so. Okay, when I'm feeling confident, I can start to put in some simple shapes. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and rough out the ball of that golden vase, and as well as the fruit that's right next to it. And then from there, I can continue to find these angles and shapes as I go along. Just like week 1, I am making dots to make it easier for myself as I block these in. Now from here, I'm observing that the bottom of that bottle is about a little more than halfway on that fruit. Now from here, I can see that the center line is somewhat touching the edge of that fruit. So that's a hidden line I could draw in on my page and rough in. So for me, it looks like I might have gone a little too long here. Just erase that out. Mark it off. At this stage, don't worry too much about trying to get it perfect. We want to do our best to roughen the shapes, and we'll adjust accordingly once we have the majority of it blocked in. All right, so from here, I'm also going to continue to find the rest of these shadows and objects. Now there is a large line here in the back that I do find important for the composition. So just kind of marking it off. And keeping those lines as straight as I can. From here, you could continue to refine some of the curves and straight lines. Make sure to not forget about the shadows as well in the background. And just a quick tip on setting up these still lifes. As much as you can, try to stick to one light source. So with my image here, all I did was set up a lamp to the left side. If you have too many light sources, you'll either have too many shadows or things will get blown out and your shadows will be a little bit harder to read. So as much as you can, keep it to one single light source, maybe something from your room or a lamp, so you can have strong shadows and clear shapes. Before moving on to categorizing my shapes, I want to double check the accuracy of my lay-in. Once I have enough shapes blocked in here, I can start using a system of lines in order to double check the accuracy of my placement. I'm going to start off with using some horizontals. And on my still life, I can try to eyeball or measure with my pencil a straight horizontal line to double check the accuracy of the bottom of the fruit with the glass bottle. I can see here that there's not a lot of negative space there, which I can then use to adjust accordingly. From there, I'm observing a straight line that there's probably a little bit more of the bottle showing through. So I need to adjust that accordingly as well. After checking some horizontals, I can also do some verticals. So from here, I can see that this vertical line to that corner, there's not that much negative space, which in this one, there's quite a bit. So I need to make an adjustment there to really showcase the amount of size for that shape. I could check a vertical shape there using my pencil. And this one's fairly good, but I can refine it a little more just to block it in a little bit more confidently. You can see that there's a shadow I missed as well. And just like we were doing earlier, you can double check some of the angles from one edge of an object to another. I'm going to put a horizontal line from the top of that vase. And I can see that observing here that it kind of runs through that curve of the label. So mine's quite off. After double checking that, I can just make that adjustment accordingly. From there, I notice I can then change the size of the bottle. And just correct those mistakes. Besides using horizontals, verticals, and angles, we're also going to be using positive and negative shapes. So a positive shape is basically the shapes of the objects themselves, such as the circle, the rectangles, and triangles that we can find when we break these down. But the negative shapes or negative space would be the opposite of the objects themselves. So it could be the background or the space that they're occupying. And looking at that carefully, I see that my biggest mistake is the negative shape that's happening between these three objects. So from here, I notice that there's quite a bit of a rectangular shape that's going on here, where mine is more of a vertical that's going on. So since this one is way off, so I'm going to have to adjust my positive shapes and move them accordingly. Go ahead and continue to refine and measure out the angles so you can get a more accurate drawing. I've gone ahead and sped up the demonstration in order to show you how I would go about fixing my drawing. Notice how I continue to use the exercises like we did last week, drawing through with my circles and marking off sections so I can draw my curves and straight lines. Remember to keep it into simple shapes, just like we did with the trace overs, using mostly rectangles, circles, ovals, triangles, keeping things in the two-dimensional realm. From here, I'm pretty satisfied with the level of work, and after you get a nice 2D block in like this, we can call it done. So for homework, I'd want you guys to do at least 4 of these drawings at about this level.